Hey everyone, homework video for Wednesday, December 11th. Practice problems numbers 1 through 10 on page 223. First one, graph each set of rational numbers on a number line. Again, as I said in class here, I'm not as worried as you getting everything exactly on that number line as I am from you ordering them from least to greatest. So we're going to worry more about ordering from least to greatest than we are trying to figure out the increments on this number line here. So as I said in class and as I've been saying, let's focus in on the negative numbers first. So we have negative 9/10, negative 2 1/2, negative 3/4. Remember, the one that has the greatest absolute value is going to be the one furthest most to the left. So in this case, negative 2 1/2, it's obviously got a greater absolute value because it has a whole number with it. So negative 2 1/2 would be listed first here. Okay, so now we also should know that 25/100 is going to be the greatest one because that's the only positive number. Now we're left with 9/10 and 3/4. So when you have things like decimals and fractions that you have to compare, it's good to change one of them to the same format. So I think keeping 9/10 the same and changing negative 9/10 the same and changing negative 3/4 to a decimal would be the best way to do this. So we should know that already 3/4 is 75/100, but again, I gave you that sheet that converts fractions, decimals, percents, all of those things. You should be using that to help you. They're not all on there, but a lot of the benchmark ones are on there. So now we have 9/10 and we have negative 9/10 and negative 75/100. Remember, if you stack decimals and you just go by place value columns, zeros are the same, 7 is less than 9 here. So when we're dealing with the negative numbers, the one with the smaller number is going to be the larger of the two, and it'll be closer to 0 because it will have a smaller absolute value. So that means negative 9/10 will be next on the number line, and then negative 3/4. Okay? So if you take a look at the next one, same thing, you're going to want to convert some of these. You have negative 1/4, 1 4/10, negative 1 4/5, 15/100. So you've got a lot of things that can convert to hundredths or perhaps tenths, 20ths, things like that. You want to try to make sure. Now, all of these are negative. So, try to find out which one is the biggest in terms of absolute value. It's going to be one of these two. Right? Which one of those two? Use your sheet that I gave you there to help you as well. Okay? So I'll try to do one in each section here. So number 3, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky has a minimum elevation of negative 124 meters. Suppose that a hiker traveled to the bottom of the cave. How many meters did the hiker travel? Well, remember, we talked about caves and we talked about how the entranceway to the cave would be 0. So the entrance to the cave would be 0. And when you go inside of the cave, that's going to be your negatives. Okay, so if the elevation is negative 124 1/10 meters, how far into the cave did it go? We had questions very similar to that in our homework, so you could always go back to that lesson in 4.4 and check that out. Fill in the circle with the positive, less than or greater than, or it could be equal to make the statement true. So negative 24/100 compared to negative 3/16. Well, these are very close in size. So one thing that you could do is change one of them to a decimal or one of them to a fraction. To me, it would make more sense to take 3/16 and convert it to a decimal. So 3/16 is the same as 3 divided by 16. And remember, we talked about this. How many 16s fit into 3? They can't fit into 3, but how many fit into 30? We put the decimal point into 0. Well, one of them does. Okay, so at this moment, you can stop because you know that if you put 0.1 and compare that to 0.24, 0.24 has a greater number in the tenths column, meaning it's going to be a smaller value and have a greater absolute value. So this one, negative 24/100, is going to be further down, further to the left on the number line than this one will be. So negative 24/100 is less than negative 3/16. Okay? Remember, sometimes you have to do the full division out. Sometimes you can just stop. just as a little bit of a pointer too for this one. So you have -4 and 4/25ths, and this one you have -4 and 1600ths. So you're going to want to convert that to -4 and 1600ths, the mixed number. And then you can change -4 and 4/25ths, change that to hundredths. 4/25ths as hundreds would be 1600ths. What does that mean? All right. And then in the last section, you have to order each set of rational numbers from least to greatest. So again, they're all going to be similar. They all want to try to, be as close to the same thing as possible. These all have a -4 in them, so we have to focus in on the 2500ths, the 7/10ths, and the 3/20ths. All right, so some process of elimination here. -4 and 7/10ths, this is more than -4.5. The other two are both less than -4.5. So -4 and 7/10ths, we could also use some of our knowledge of 1/2 to help us there. That's going to be the biggest absolute value. That's going to be the furthest to the left. So now you just have to focus in on 4 and 2500ths and 4 and 30/20ths. So 4 and 2500ths, you could change 4 and 30/20ths to hundredths by multiplying by 5. This would be 4 and 1500ths, both with negative. And of course, -4 and 2500ths would go next. And -4 and 3/20ths would be the biggest. Okay? All right, I think I did enough there for you. You should be able to figure out the rest. See you tomorrow.